In a bustling marketplace of a distant alien planet, bright lights flashed in every direction. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked through the busy streets, trading goods and exchanging strange items. The air was thick with the buzz of voices, and the sounds of vendors shouting their prices. But among the crowd, there was one figure who stood out, a small, fragile alien girl. She was no taller than a human child, with delicate blue skin and big, sad eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the world. The girl stood in the corner, watching the busy market scene with quiet eyes. She wasn't like the other aliens. While the others carried themselves with pride, her shoulders slumped and her head hung low. She had no friends here, only the cruel words of strangers to keep her company. Today, however, it wasn't just the strangers. There was someone else, a tall, imposing alien who had been mocking her for days now. His laughter echoed through the market as he approached the girl. He towered over her, casting a long shadow that seemed to swallow her whole. "Look at you," he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "What are you even doing here? You don't belong in this marketplace. You're too small, too weak." The girl shrank back, her heart pounding in her chest. She tried to ignore him, but his words felt like stones being thrown at her. She wanted to run away, to hide somewhere where no one could see her, but the marketplace was full of eyes. No matter where she went, the laughter followed. The tall alien's laughter grew louder. "You should go back to where you came from. This place is too big for you." The girl bit her lip, fighting back tears. She had heard these words before, but today they cut deeper. She felt the weight of the alien's cruelty in every word, but she couldn't fight back. She was too small, too weak, just as he said. As the alien continued his mocking, something unexpected happened. From the corner of the marketplace, in the shadows of a tall building, a human stood watching. The human was different from the others. He wasn't part of the busy crowd, and his eyes didn't reflect the indifference that most people had toward the alien girl. Instead, his gaze was focused, intent. His eyes were fixed on the alien who had been mocking the girl. He didn't make a sound, didn't move. He simply watched. The human's face was calm, almost unreadable. He wore a worn-out jacket, and his eyes were sharp, scanning every movement in the marketplace. He was standing far away, out of sight of the alien girl, but he could see everything. The tall alien's words, the girl's helplessness, and the growing tension in the air. It was almost as if the human was waiting for something to happen. The girl's eyes flickered toward the ground, unwilling to meet the alien's gaze. The tall alien stepped closer, towering above her. He reached down and, with a laugh, grabbed her arm roughly. "Come on, little one," he said, his tone mocking. "Let's see how long you can stand the heat of this marketplace." The girl winced, trying to pull away, but she was no match for his strength. She knew she couldn't fight him. Her tiny frame was no match for his tall, powerful body. She had learned long ago that resistance only made things worse. She stood still, her heart racing, hoping the cruel alien would let go of her arm. But he didn't. Still hidden in the shadows, felt a strange pull. Something inside him stirred as he watched the scene unfold. He knew he couldn't stand idly by and watch. He had to do something. His hand clenched into a fist as he took a step forward, though he stayed hidden in the shadows. He had seen enough, could feel the injustice in the air, and he couldn't let it go unanswered. He was no hero, but he knew that if he did nothing, the girl would be lost in this cruel world forever. The human watched closely, his mind working fast. He had seen the alien's mocking gestures before, but he also saw something else, the girl's resilience. She didn't cry out or beg. She simply endured, as if this was the life she had always known. He had seen that before, too. People, or in this case, aliens, who were too used to pain to fight back. As the tall alien dragged the girl through the market, the human took one last look at the scene. His decision was made. He stepped into the light, silently moving towards the scene. But he didn't rush in. He wasn't here to fight the tall alien. No, he had something else in mind. The human knew that if he acted too quickly, he would ruin his chance. He had to be patient to make the tall alien believe that the girl was truly powerless. That was when he would strike. In the meantime, the girl remained motionless, her eyes cast downward, unaware of the human's presence. She had given up on ever escaping this cycle of cruelty, but little did she know, someone was watching, waiting for the right moment to change everything. The alien marketplace buzzed with its usual chaos. But for the small, fragile alien girl, everything felt distant and muffled. The towering alien who had mocked her continued to parade through the market, his laughter still echoing in her ears. She stood there, trapped in the crowd, lost in the sea of unfamiliar faces. But then, something strange happened, something she hadn't expected. As the girl shifted through the crowd, trying to disappear into the shadows, she felt a sudden pull, subtle change in the atmosphere. It was as though the noise around her had softened, and all that remained was the sound of her heart racing in her chest. She glanced to the side, only to catch a glimpse of something, or rather, someone. A figure stood in the corner of the market, not quite blending into the crowd, but not drawing attention either. He was a human, unlike any of the aliens she had seen before. He wore a faded jacket, his hands tucked in his pockets, his posture calm yet purposeful. The most striking thing about him was his eyes. They weren't filled with the usual contempt or indifference that the other beings held for her. Instead, they seemed knowing, understanding, as if he could see her suffering without her saying a word. The girl froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. She had never been seen in such a way by anyone, let alone a human. Her instincts told her to turn away, to retreat into the crowd, but something held her there. The human didn't approach. He didn't even move. He simply watched her. His gaze didn't feel intrusive or judging. It felt like ... hope. For a fleeting second, she wondered if he might be different. Perhaps he would offer her something more than cruel words and empty stares. But before she could think more, the tall alien, still unaware of the human's presence, grabbed her arm again, jerking her back into the present. "Where do you think you're going, little one?" he sneered. His hand tightening around her arm, the girl's heart raced. Her first instinct was to pull away, but she couldn't. The human was still standing there, watching, but she didn't know if he would help. Could he? Should she even ask for help from someone so unfamiliar? But before she could decide, the human made his move. Slowly, deliberately, he began to walk through the crowd, his steps quiet but purposeful. Moved like a shadow, blending in with the surrounding chaos, but never losing sight of her. The girl didn't know why, but she felt something stirring in her chest. A small spark of hope. Maybe he would do something. The arrogant alien didn't notice the human's presence, too focused on taunting the girl. He dragged her closer to a stall, laughing at her distress. "You're nothing. Do you think you'll ever be anything?" He mocked, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of nearby shoppers. The human was close now, his eyes locked onto the scene unfolding. He saw the girl's defeated posture, the way she barely held herself together under the alien's cruelty. He could tell she was at the edge, her strength barely holding her up. And yet he knew he couldn't just rush in. No, the human had his plan. He had to be subtle, to make the arrogant alien believe that the girl was weak, that she could never stand up for herself. He had to give her the chance to rise on her own. The human couldn't fix everything, but he could guide her to find the strength she didn't even know she had. "Enough," the human finally said, his voice cutting through the noise of the marketplace. It wasn't loud, but it had an authority that made the air around them pause. The tall alien froze, his head snapping in the direction of the voice. The human stepped forward, his gaze now squarely on the arrogant alien. The girl's eyes widened in confusion as she looked from the human to the alien. The crowd around them began to quiet down, sensing that something unusual was happening. The tall alien laughed, trying to mask the unease that crept into his voice. "What do you want, human? This is none of your business." The human didn't flinch. He took another step forward, his eyes unwavering. "It's not your business either," he said calmly, his voice carrying a weight that made the arrogant alien hesitate. "But it is mine." The girl watched in silence, still unsure what to make of the human's sudden intervention. The tall alien turned his attention back to her, his grip tightening. "I'll deal with you later," he growled, releasing her arm with a final shove. For a moment, the girl stood frozen, the human's presence giving her a strange sense of relief. She couldn't understand it, but she felt a shift inside her. Maybe the human saw something in her that she had never seen in herself. Maybe this wasn't the end of her suffering. The human glanced at her briefly, his expression unreadable, before turning away. "Come with me," he said simply, his voice low but clear. It wasn't a command, but an invitation. He didn't expect her to follow. But his words offered something she had never been offered before, a moment. For a moment, the girl stood there, her mind racing. She had spent so long in the shadows, hiding from the cruelty of the world. Now, a door had opened. A chance, however small, to escape. To find something better? Without thinking, she took a step forward. And then another. As she moved closer to the human, the tall alien watched from the distance, his eyes narrowing. Had underestimated both of them, the girl and the human. He had no idea what was coming next. The marketplace was alive with noise, but for the alien girl, it felt quieter now. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her mind was spinning. The tall alien had walked away, but his presence still lingered like a shadow. She could still hear. His mocking voice, could still feel the grip of his hand on her arm. Yet something had shifted. The human's words, his quiet invitation to follow him, echoed in her mind. She glanced behind her, watching the human as he led her through the narrow alleyways of the market. He didn't say much, but there was something about his calm demeanor that made her feel safer. It wasn't like the other beings in the market who looked at her with pity or disdain. The human didn't look at her like she was weak. Instead, his eyes showed understanding, as if he knew exactly what she was capable of even if she didn't. For a long time, the girl had told herself she was nothing, small, weak, and insignificant. The cruel words of the tall alien had only reinforced those beliefs, but now, with the human walking beside her, something inside her stirred. She wasn't sure what to make of it. She had never had someone stand up for her before, let alone offer to help. It felt strange, almost impossible. As they moved deeper into the market's hidden corners, the human finally spoke. His voice was low and steady, as though he had been waiting for the right moment to say something. "You don't have to let him control you." The girl froze, her breath catching in her throat. She turned to look at him, her eyes wide with confusion. "What do you mean?" she whispered. The human stopped walking and turned to face her. He wasn't looking at her with pity, or even sympathy. His gaze was firm, yet kind, as if he were trying to awaken something within her that had been dormant for too long. "Everything he said to you," the human continued, "it was a lie. You're not weak. You're stronger than you know." The girl swallowed hard. The words felt foreign, almost too much to believe. For so long she had lived with the idea that her size and fragility defined her, that because she was small, she could never make an impact. She had accepted the taunts and cruelty as truths, because what else was there? The human stepped closer, his voice now quieter, almost as if sharing a secret. "I've been watching you. I see what you've been through. You've survived things that would break others. You're not just a small alien girl. You have more power inside you than you realize." The girl looked away, uncertain. She had never been told anything like this before. No one had ever seen her as anything other than a victim, a small target for bigger, stronger beings. But something in the human's voice, something in the way he spoke, made her question everything she had believed about herself. He wasn't finished yet. "I'm going to show you how to turn this around, how to make him see you for who you truly are." She blinked, her mind still reeling. "How?" The human smiled slightly, as if this was exactly what he had been waiting for. "The first step is to stop thinking of yourself as weak. Your size doesn't define you. Your strength comes from your will, your ability to keep going when others would fall. That's where your true power lies, and I can help you unlock it." Girl felt a stirring within her, something unfamiliar, yet exhilarating. She had never thought of herself as strong, but as the human spoke, she felt something deep within her shift. Maybe she wasn't just a helpless target. Maybe she wasn't as small and insignificant as she had been told. Maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. The human motioned for her to follow him once again, his gaze never leaving her. We're going to make him regret ever thinking you were easy to crush. But first, you need to trust yourself. Trust that you can change the way people see you. The girl hesitated for only a moment before nodding. She wasn't sure where this would lead, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe this human saw something in her that she had never seen herself. As they walked further into the darkened parts of the marketplace, away from the crowds and the mocking eyes, the girl began to feel a growing sense of purpose. She wasn't just following the human, she was taking the first step towards something bigger. The plan was only just beginning. But for the first time in her life, the girl felt like she could make a choice. She wasn't powerless anymore. Had a chance to prove that she wasn't just the alien who would be mocked and forgotten. She could rise. She could stand tall, and she would. The shadows grew longer as the girl followed the human deeper into the market's narrow corridors. The hum of voices faded into a soft buzz, almost as if the entire marketplace had become a distant echo. There was a tension in the air, thick. With the anticipation of something about to unfold, the human had said little since their conversation. He only led her silently, occasionally glancing back to make sure she was still following. There was no fear in his eyes, only a quiet determination that felt oddly contagious. With every step, the girl felt a shift inside her. Her shoulders, which had always slumped in defeat, began to straighten. Her heartbeat, which had once raced with anxiety, began to steady. They reached a secluded corner of the marketplace, tucked away behind a stack of crates, far from the bustling crowd. The human stopped and turned to face her. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. The girl nodded, though she wasn't sure if she was ready at all. She had never been in a situation like this before. Never had she thought that she would stand up to the arrogant alien who had tormented her for so long. But there was something in the human's words, something in the way he believed in her, that made her feel she had to try. "You won't be alone," the human added, as if reading her thoughts. "This is your moment. Don't let him take it from you." The girl looked at him, her eyes uncertain, but filled with a flicker of something new hope. She wasn't just standing there waiting to be saved anymore. She had a part to play, and it was time to step into the light. "Let's go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Together. They moved toward the center of the marketplace, where the tall alien was once again showing off his strength to a small group of onlookers. His arrogance was palpable, his laughter echoed as he puffed out his chest and made grand gestures, like a king holding court. He was surrounded by a group of admiring, yet fearful alien spectators who dared not challenge him. The girl felt a knot tighten in her stomach as they drew closer. She had seen him like this before, touchable, powerful, and unchallenged. But this time, it was different. She wasn't the same alien girl who had shrunk under his mockery. The human stayed close, walking beside her. They didn't speak, but the girl could feel the quiet strength in his presence, like a shield she could lean on when the time came. As they approached the group, the arrogant alien spotted them. His eyes narrowed, and a wicked smile stretched across his face. "Well, if it isn't the little alien girl," he sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "Back for more humiliation? Or have you finally learned your place?" The girl's breath caught in her throat, but she didn't falter. She stood tall, her hands clenched at her sides, drawing strength from something deep inside. But she had learned to fight this day not with force, but with her own will. She met his gaze, not with fear, but with something that shocked even herself: defiance. The tall alien scoffed, looking her up and down. "Did you bring your human friend to fight your battles for you? How pathetic." "Not this time," the girl said, her voice clear, steady. She didn't look at the human beside her, but she could feel his presence solid, unwavering like a quiet anchor holding her steady. The arrogant alien's smile faltered for a moment. Then he laughed again, a harsh, mocking sound. "So you think you can challenge me now? You're nothing. I could crush you with a single hand." The girl didn't back down. She took a deep breath, and in the most defiant tone she could muster, spoke. "You've underestimated me for the last time." There was a heavy pause. The marketplace seemed to hold its breath as the tall alien processed her words. For a brief moment, he seemed unsure, as though he had never expected her to speak like this. Then, the mockery returned to his voice. "Oh, so now you're brave," he taunted. "You think you can take me on, little one? You're just a weakling. Who's too small for this world?" The human didn't move, but the girl could feel his support, a silent promise that she wasn't alone. The crowd, sensing the tension, began to murmur, shifting their weight from one foot to the other. They were watching, waiting for something to happen. The girl stepped forward, narrowing the space between them. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," she said, her voice rising with a new strength, "and I won't let you tear me down again." The tall alien stared at her, his expression unreadable. The crowd had fallen silent, the air thick with anticipation. For the first time, the arrogant alien seemed unsure of himself. It was no longer the unstoppable force he had once appeared to be. The girl's defiance, her refusal to bow down, had shifted the dynamic. It was his turn to hesitate. For a long moment, neither moved. The girl could feel the weight of his gaze, but she didn't flinch. The human, standing beside her, was like a steady presence, a reminder that she had the power to take control of her own fate. The arrogant alien took a step back, his smile faltering, then finally gave a low growl of frustration. "You're lucky I don't have time for this," he muttered, turning on his heel and pushing through the crowd, leaving the girl and the human standing together. The marketplace slowly came back to life, but something had changed. The girl stood, tall, her breath steady, her heart still racing. She had done it. She had stood up to him, and for the first time, she realized she didn't need to be afraid anymore. The marketplace was still alive with chatter, but the air had changed. The tall alien who had once towered over the girl was nowhere to be seen. The crowd, which had witnessed the brief but intense standoff, slowly dispersed, murmuring among themselves. The girl stood in the same spot, her heart still pounding, but now with a sense of accomplishment she had never felt before. She glanced sideways at the human, who had remained silent through the entire confrontation. His face was unreadable, but there was a slight nod of approval, a silent acknowledgement of her strength. For a moment, they stood there together, the weight of the encounter still hanging in the air. The girl wasn't sure what had just happened, but she felt a shift within herself. The feeling of defeat that had followed her for so long had been replaced by something new, a spark of confidence. But just as she began to process the victory, something unexpected happened. From behind them, a voice broke the silence. "Not bad, for a small alien girl." The girl froze. The voice was familiar. She turned slowly to find the arrogant alien standing a few feet away, his towering figure once again casting a shadow over her. His mocking smile had returned, but this time there was something different about it. It wasn't the smug arrogance he had shown before. It was darker, colder. "You think you've won?" he sneered, stepping closer. "You don't know what you've done. This isn't over." The girl's heart skipped a beat. Had she misunderstood? Was this really just the beginning? Before she could speak, the human beside her stepped forward, placing himself between her and the tall alien. His presence was calm but firm, and the way he stood made it clear that he wasn't backing down. "You're not in control anymore," the human said quietly, his voice low but full of authority. "You've made your mistakes, and now it's time for you to leave." The tall alien let out a bitter laugh. "You think I'm afraid of you?" His eyes glinted with something dark, something calculating. "I'm not the one you should be worried about." The girl frowned, confused. What was going on? Why did he sound so ominous? Was this part of some bigger plan? She had just stood up for herself, yet it seemed like there was more to the situation than she had realized. The arrogant alien's smile widened as he stepped back, raising a hand in the air. "You've made an enemy today, little girl, and enemies have a way of coming back when you least expect it." Before the girl could respond, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. His words hung in the air, thick with warning. The marketplace seemed to exhale, the tension finally easing, but the girl's stomach twisted with unease. Was this truly over? or had something more sinister begun? The human remained by her side, his eyes watching the crowd, his posture relaxed, but his mind clearly alert. "You were right to stand up to him," the human said after a moment, turning to face her. "But this isn't the end. You've just made him realize that you're not someone to be toyed with. He won't forget this." The girl's thoughts raced. She had been so sure that standing up to the alien would somehow end everything. But now she understood. Victory was never as simple as a single moment of defiance. The arrogant alien had been defeated in that moment, but the real battle was yet to come. It was a battle for respect, for power, for the right to stand her ground without fear. "How do you know all of this?" the girl asked, her voice hesitant. "Why are you helping me?" The human looked at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "Let's just say I've seen this kind of thing before. You have something in you that he doesn't understand. That's why he fears you, and that's why he'll keep coming back." The girl's mind was spinning, but she couldn't deny the truth in his words. She had never seen herself as strong, not truly. But now, in the wake of the confrontation, she felt a flicker of power, something untapped, something waiting to be harnessed. "I don't want to keep running," she said softly, more to herself than to the human. "I want to be stronger. I want to show them all that I'm not just someone they can walk over." The human nodded approvingly. "And let's make sure that they know. You have the strength. You just need to believe in it. I'll help you find the way." As they stood there in the fading light of the marketplace, the girl felt a strange sense of purpose take root within her. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone in it. She wasn't just the small alien girl anymore. She was something more. And this time, the arrogant aliens. Words, his threats, didn't hold the same power over her. The real battle had just begun. But this time, she was ready. The marketplace had calmed, but the girl couldn't shake the tension that lingered in the air. The arrogant alien's ominous words echoed in her mind, haunting every step she took. "You've made an enemy today. Enemies have a way of coming back." The more she thought about it, the more the weight of his words pressed down on her. Had she truly won, or had she only awakened a much bigger threat? The human stood beside her, his calm presence a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside. He hadn't said much since the encounter, but his silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was as if he, too, was processing what had just transpired. The girl glanced at him, searching for something more. She had started this journey with him as a guide, but now she felt a growing curiosity. He wasn't just helping her out of kindness. There was something deeper, here's something he hadn't fully shared with her, yet they walked in silence for a while, the busy marketplace now just a distant hum behind them. The human led her down quieter alleys, far from the prying eyes of the crowd. It was only then, when the weight of the silence began to settle between them, that the girl spoke. "Who are you really?" she asked, her voice steady but edged with the question she had been holding back for so long. "Why are you helping me?" The human stopped in his tracks. His eyes flickered with something, maybe surprise, maybe something more, but he didn't avoid her gaze. He had been waiting for this moment, she realized. Was waiting for her to ask. And now, it was his turn to reveal the truth. "I'm not just anyone," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "Been following you for longer than you think." The girl's heart skipped a beat. She opened her mouth to speak, but the human raised his hand, signaling her to listen. "I've been watching the way you've been treated, the way they've looked down on you," he continued, his tone serious. "I've seen it happen to others like you, small, vulnerable, ignored, and I've watched as they've broken them one by one." The girl's mind raced. Had he been following her all this time? He spoke as if he knew her life, knew her pain. But how? She hadn't seen him before. Had he been watching from the shadows, just like he had during the confrontation with the arrogant alien? "You've been a part of something bigger," the human said, his voice a little softer now, almost like he was trying to break a painful truth. "There are others like you alien refugees, oppressed by forces you don't even fully understand. The arrogant alien you faced? He's just one piece of a much bigger machine." The girl's breath caught in her throat. "A bigger machine?" she repeated, her voice shaky. "What are you talking about?" The human turned to face her fully now, his expression grave. I work with an underground network, one that helps beings like you. We're trying to expose the forces that prey on those who are weakest, the ones who don't have the power to fight back. People like the one you confronted." The girl felt the ground beneath her feet shift. Her mind reeled. "You're part of some rebellion?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He nodded slowly. "Not exactly a rebellion, but something similar. We believe in fighting for the rights of those who've been silenced. And I've been watching you, because I think you're ready to stand up in a way you never thought possible. You have strength, not just from your size, but from your spirit. And I think you've only scratched the surface of what you can do." The girl felt a surge of emotion, anger, confusion, and hope all at once. She had lived her whole life believing that she was too small, too weak, that there was no place for her in this vast, dangerous world. But now, she was being told that there was a network, a cause that could make her stronger, that could help her fight back. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, a sense of betrayal in her voice. "Why didn't you say anything when I was struggling? Why wait until now?" The human's expression softened, and for the first time, the girl saw the vulnerability in his eyes. "I couldn't," he said simply. "I needed you to find your own strength. I knew you wouldn't believe me until you stood up for yourself, until you saw that you didn't need anyone to give you permission to be strong. It had to come from you." Girl felt a deep ache inside her. She didn't know if she could believe him. She didn't know if she could trust him fully. But one thing was clear. Everything she had known about her life was about to change. She wasn't just a weak, small alien anymore. She had a purpose now, and that purpose was much bigger than surviving day to day. "You've done well so far," the human continued, his voice steady, but with a hint of pride. "But this is just the beginning. There are bigger battles ahead. I think you're ready for them. Ready to fight for those who have no voice. Ready to lead." Her heart thundered in her chest. "Lead, but I'm nothing. I'm just ... me." The human smiled slightly, his gaze filled with quiet confidence. "No, you're everything. You've already shown that." The girl stood in silence, the weight of his words settling over her. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a victim. She didn't feel small. She felt something else, a force awakening within her. Something she hadn't known was there, but something the human had seen long before she ever had. The road ahead would be long. The challenges would only grow more difficult. But she was no longer afraid. The truth had been revealed. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for others who, like her, had been silenced by cruelty and oppression. The girl wasn't alone anymore. Now she had a cause worth fighting for. The quiet alley where the girl and the human stood now felt like the eye of a storm. A stillness that contrasted with the whirlwind of emotions inside her.
Ow.
The weight of everything she had just learned, the network, the hidden agenda, the bigger forces at play felt overwhelming. She had always lived her life in the shadows, just trying to survive, just trying to blend in. But now, everything had changed. She wasn't just some small, invisible alien. She was a part of something far bigger, and she could no longer ignore the reality of her new role. The human had given her a choice, one that carried immense weight: to step into the fight, to embrace her strength and lead, or to turn away and remain hidden in the background. The girl's heart was torn in two. Half of her wanted to run, to escape back into the safety of her old life, where she was invisible, where no one expected anything from her. The other half felt a powerful pull toward the unknown, toward the future the human had shown her, a future where she could make a difference. "I don't know if I can do this," the girl confessed, her voice wavering for the first time in what felt like ages. She stood on the precipice, peering into the unknown, the weight of the world bearing down on her. What if I fail? What if I'm not strong enough? What if I'm just ... too small? The human looked at her, his eyes steady and kind, but there was no trace of pity in them, only understanding. "You've already done more than most," he said, his voice calm but full of conviction. "You stood up to the alien who thought he could control you. You faced him with courage, even when you were afraid. It's strength, and that's the kind of strength this world needs." She swallowed hard, her thoughts spinning like a storm. She had been small, powerless, and overlooked her entire life. She had learned to accept it, to hide in the corners of the world where no one could see her. But now the human was asking her to step into the light, to fight for something larger than herself. "But how do I know I'm ready?" she asked softly, almost as if speaking the question to herself. "How do I know that I can lead, that I can fight for something more?" The human smiled slightly, as if the question had been expected. "You don't know for sure. Never will. Not completely. But that's the nature of change, of fighting for something bigger than yourself. It's never easy. It's never clear. But it's worth it. And you're already more ready than you think. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to try, to make a choice, and to stand by it, no matter what comes." The girl felt her heart race. She had spent so long being afraid of standing out, of facing the world head-on. But in that moment, something shifted within her. The idea of hiding, of fading back into the shadows, no longer seemed like an option. She had a choice now, one that would determine the path she would take from here. She could shrink back and let the world pass her by, or she could stand tall and face whatever came next. Even if it meant stepping into a future full of uncertainty. "I'm not perfect," she said slowly, finding the courage in her own voice. "But I don't want to be invisible anymore. I want to fight. I want to make a difference. Even if I don't know how yet, I have to try." The human's expression softened. A mixture of pride and approval in his eyes. "It's all any of us can do. You'll never be alone in this. We fight together." The girl's gaze hardened with determination. She wasn't the same person she had been just days ago. She was someone who had been given a purpose, a chance to change the course of her life. And perhaps even the lives of others who had been silenced by fear and oppression. As the human turned to lead her further into the unknown, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It was still heavy, the uncertainty and the looming threat of what was to come. But it no longer felt suffocating. She didn't have to face it alone. She had the strength within her, and with the human by her side, she knew she wasn't without allies. The wind had shifted in her favor. She had made her choice. The world, which had once seemed so vast and intimidating, felt like a place where she could make a difference, where her voice could be heard, where she could rise. They walked together, the sounds of the marketplace fading behind them. With each step, she felt more like herself, more like the leader she had never known she could be. And as the shadows of the alley swallowed them whole, she felt a spark of hope for the first time in years. The fight was just beginning, but she was ready. The final decision had been made, and the world was waiting.